What do you believe is the most important thing about marriage that you wish you had known before getting married?
That marriage is hard. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's great, but there's also two sinners living in a house trying to work together in a God-honoring way, but not always succeeding at that. So marriage is very sanctifying. Teaches you things that you don't realize you have to learn until they're presented to you and you're like, wow, I'm a really selfish person, or wow, I'm really not patient, or those types of things.
What was your view of marriage when you were a teenager, and how is your current view of marriage different than that?
I thought when I was a teenager that you just got to hang out with your best friend all the time, which I'm married to my best friend, so that's great. But you don't just get to sit around and chat with your best friend all the time. There's like real life that's involved in marriage. So you have to actually like do dishes and do laundry and, figure out who's going to change the diapers or who's going to give the kids baths or those types of things. I now know that it's giving of yourself, even when you don't feel like you can or want to give, instead of just sitting around and enjoying your best friend.
If you could give one piece of advice to young women desiring to prepare themselves for marriage, what would it be?
My initial reaction when she asked me this question was grow up, because there's a lot that you learn in marriage that is hard to learn before you're married. It's not something that you can get a crash course in marriage. How the Bible talks about marriage is that a woman is under her father's headship until she's handed over to her husband, and that is good and godly and right. But marriage looks very different than being under the headship of your father. In you don't submission and obedience, submitting to your husband and obedience to your parent are two different things. And so learning how to submit while also helping your husband in making decisions and things that you're not asked to do when you're a child. When you're 18, 19, 20, still living in your father's house, and mom and dad want to buy a car, they're probably not asking you what car you want. When you get married, your husband may ask you for some of that advice and how to not overstep the bounds of not being submissive because you don't like the color car he picked, or you don't like the options available on it, but also being respectful and sharing, well, we really should get a car that has air conditioning because it would help the family be more comfortable. So learning how to step into that role of submission as opposed to obedience.
Well, do you have any practical ways that they could work to prepare themselves? Or not? It's okay if you don't.
You must. Learning how to obey your father. I'm talking mostly to women here. In the information I'm giving, it looks different to a young man who's getting married. But I know from experience as a young woman and preparing my young daughters, I don't have a son who's biblically getting ready for a marriage. So I'm working with young girls at this point. So learning to obey your father with a good attitude, that daddy may have reasons for making decisions that don't seem like the best decision in your mind, and learning how to do that happily and graciously. because your husband and you are going to have different decisions. Even if you're the best of friends, he's going to want the green car and you're going to want the blue car. And so graciously just, it's okay, not that big of a deal. Letting things slide that are not your place to take over. So learning how to do that with your father in obedience to him.